In 2004, 10 years ago, the Supreme Court of Indonesia and the Federal Court of Australia signed a Memorandum of Understanding in Jakarta. It was an historic occasion. It was the first time that superior courts of two different countries had entered an agreement to work together on development projects designed to improve access to justice for the poor and needy. Since then, our work with Indonesia has been assisted by the Australian aid programs, for which we are grateful for their assistance and guidance. Also, some years later, we were joined by the Family Court of Australia. Their participation in the partnership greatly enhanced its quality and diversity. The Memorandum of Understanding established an innovative model that has since been followed by other courts in other countries. And that is something all three courts can be proud of. The focus of the Federal Court's efforts to support Indonesians has been on assisting the Indonesian courts with their own institutional reforms to improve the quality of justice by making it fairer and more easily accessible. If access to justice is increased, the standard of court services must also be increased to be meaningful. In pursuing these objectives in Indonesia, under the leadership of the Indonesian Supreme Court, the Federal Court's chief counterparts have been the General Courts of Indonesia and the registries across the country that are the judicial system's main interface with the Indonesian public. My colleagues will say something more about the detail of the important projects we have worked on over the last decade in the course of implementing the Memorandum of Understanding. But I would like to emphasise that our relationship with Indonesia's Supreme Court and the courts across Indonesia that it supervises is the Federal Court's most important international relationship. Our legal and judicial systems are very different, but our tasks as judges, court staff and people are, in the end, very similar: the delivery of a just system to our people. I look forward to renewing the Memorandum of Understanding in Jakarta this year to mark the 10th anniversary of its signing and of our cooperation with Indonesia. I also look forward to helping support over the next 10 years the work of the renewed Memorandum of Understanding in the interests of the cooperation of Australia and Indonesia and the development and maintenance of the rule of law in Indonesia.
Late next month, we're heading to Indonesia again, to Jakarta, for the signing of the 5th MOU between the Family Court of Australia and the Supreme and Indonesian courts in Jakarta. This is the result of 9 years of cooperation and collaboration between the religious courts and the Supreme Court and the Family Court and Federal Court, in which time we have been able to provide significant inroads to providing justice for the poor in Indonesia as a result of our collaboration. In particular, the result of our cooperation together has enabled justice seekers in Indonesia, who are mainly women single heads of households, to be able to have access to courts to obtain the marriage certificates and the proof of their marriages that they require, and particularly for their children to obtain identity documents so that they can access provision of social services that would otherwise be unavailable. There are a number of other initiatives that have happened as well, the provision of legal aid, the provision of court circuits, and it's been a very good journey for the Family Court, and I'm very proud to have been involved for so long in a collaboration and cooperation which has brought tangible benefits to many of the poor in Indonesia. And I am looking forward to the continuing relationship with the next MOU and in the years thereafter.
Firstly, let me say how privileged I am to have been involved in the process of court-to-court cooperation with the Supreme Court of Indonesia. It has been a great privilege to meet the highly respected judges of the Indonesian Supreme Court, and it has been an amazing experience seeing the hard work of the court and of the judicial reform team in driving a difficult process of change. I'm very sad that I can't be there on this auspicious occasion, but I'll be there on the next one and the next one. Most of the Federal Court's work over the past 10 years with the Supreme Court of Indonesia has been in relation to judicial activities to increase access to the courts for the poor and disadvantaged. It's taken many different forms, but my main focus has been in relation to class actions. As you know, class actions are a procedural regime which provide great benefits for any community. It enables the poor and disadvantaged to bring proceedings through a wider class of people using a class representative, bringing one case instead of hundreds or perhaps thousands. Of course, this means that huge savings are available in terms of court resources, huge savings are available for the parties, and access to justice can be greatly improved. It also tends to level the playing field between the parties. On paper, the Supreme Court has got a very impressive class action regime, but the Supreme Court considers that it's not working as well as they expected. I respectfully agree, and I think it could work better, and the Federal Court, is very grateful and pleased that it has been asked to assist in the process of improving that regime. The Federal Court were pioneers in Australia of class action litigation and the management of those complex cases, and we hope that we can assist the Supreme Court in improving the regime, the operation of the regime in Indonesia. Let me say on a personal note that I hope that we continue to see Pak Wid, even though his retirement date's approaching, and I'd like to thank him for the drive and enthusiasm in his work. I'd particularly like to thank also the Chief Justice, Pak Ali, for his work and the care and respect with which he's treated his relationship with our court. We greatly value the relationship. And without the work of the judicial reform team and the considered and creative approach they've taken, many of the roadblocks that have been hit might have caused this particular vehicle to stall. I look forward to being part of the continuing process, and I look forward to even closer relationships between our respective courts. Thank you.
It's been an honour and a great privilege to be involved on behalf of the Federal Court in its cooperation with the Supreme Court of Indonesia since the creation of the MOU 10 years ago. Our involvement with the Supreme Court goes back more than 15 years, and that involvement set the environment which made the establishment of the MOU a natural progression arising from the cooperation between the two courts. Today we celebrate the 10th anniversary of what at the time we believe was the first court-to-court MOU in the world. Legal reform and court reform is complex, difficult and hard to achieve. It was hard for me to imagine what might have been done 10 years ago. The achievements of the Supreme Court have been outstanding and substantial in a very difficult context. The recent interns who came to work with us in the Federal Court in Melbourne went back to the Supreme Court of Indonesia as reform champions. A good example of one of the reforms is the new electronic dossier handling system, which has reduced the judgment production time from 6 months to 3 months. Other substantial reforms include electronic filing, business process re-engineering of court processes, and a major achievement was the backlog reduction project. Access to justice for justice seekers is now quick and inexpensive compared to what it was a decade ago. In 2013, the Supreme Court finalised more than 16,000 cases. That was a record as the highest number of finalisations ever achieved. And the pending caseload at that time is also a record as the lowest ever. That's an outstanding achievement. It's been a great privilege to be able to play a small part in these major reforms, and I look forward to the opportunity in the future to do some more work with you.
It has been a real honour working with the Supreme Court of Indonesia, and in particular the religious courts of Indonesia, over the past 8 years. I've had the privilege of many delegations coming to Australia and of being able to travel to Jakarta and other areas of Indonesia. We've worked together on some very exciting projects, from developing Prodeo, legal aid, Sidang Keliling, the baseline studies, and the most recent research into Indonesia's missing millions. Access to justice for the poor and for women and for people with disabilities. I'm very proud of the work that we have done together, and I look forward to a long, ongoing relationship with the courts and to developing more innovative initiatives along the way. Thank you.
It has been a privilege and a very personally rewarding part of my work in the Federal Court to be involved in the program of cooperation and shared experiences that comprise of the work that we are undertaking as part of the Memorandum of Understanding between our two courts. During this time, I have observed enormous achievements that have been undertaken by an amazing group of people that are committed and determined and have stayed focused on achieving the Supreme Court's reform initiatives. Legal reform in the courts is extremely challenging, as I have experienced in the Federal Court. However, once you start the momentum and have the focus and the determination to achieve that reform, it is extremely rewarding and can achieve incredible tangible outcomes for those that are driving that reform. As part of our Memorandum of Understanding, we have seen comprehensive programs that have underpinned that reform and have seen incredible outcomes in relation to case management initiatives that have already been implemented. This is particularly reflected in our internship program, which provides for a very comprehensive and extensive sharing of experiences between our two courts. Our current program of cooperation provides for the continuation of that internship program and is added to by court annex mediation, class actions and procedures around small claims. Court annex mediation is an integral part of the Federal Court's case management system. Court annex mediation provides for faster and accessible outcomes for the parties that are more likely to be affected, as it provides for real and tangible outcomes that are likely to be more accepted as part of a finalised process. The Federal Court of Australia has extensive experience in innovative court annex mediation practices. We have institutionalised court annex mediation as part of the court's case management system, and we are very pleased to have the opportunity to share our experience and work very collaboratively with the courts across Indonesia to assist them to also provide for that institutionalised reform. I very much look forward to our continued working relationship and to sharing our experiences in this particularly important work of court reform. Thank you.